Boom. And we're live. Francis Ellis, sir.
Felix Levine.
Thank you for coming on today.
I'm so pleased to be here. This is fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, as I told you a few seconds ago, I like to ask my guests if there's a little something, little tidbit, little story, little anything that the world may not already know about Francis Ellis.
Sure. I had a nanny when I was 3. Her name was Georgie.
Okay.
But I don't know if that was short for Georgina. I don't know what the deal was. She was British, and she was a white nanny.
Mm.
And we harbored her illegally. She was an illegal immigrant.
Wow.
She was my nanny for years.
Georgie.
Yeah, and now she's married an American guy, and she's become a naturalized citizen, right?
Do you still talk to her?
Well, we do keep in touch. Not that often, but, her kids are all grown up. But, I just wanted to let everyone know I'm sorry for harboring an illegal immigrant and for my parents providing work for them.
Wow.
But we loved her. She was fantastic.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's actually good. I like that one.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that about me.
So, want to get into it more, maybe in a chronological sense, for maybe people who are not familiar with you and your story.
Yeah.
Maybe give us a little brief background on life growing up. What was Francis like growing up?
I grew up in Maine. You know Maine?
I do know Maine.
Not many people know Maine.
I mean, like, I know Maine. I've been there once, so I can't say I know Maine.
Everyone thinks of Maine and they think of preppy sailboat camps and boat shoes
There's a lot of water.
Stuff like that. And that's not really Maine. Heroin's a big problem in Maine.
So what's Maine
Opiates.
really, other than that, what's Maine really like?
Well, it's pristine. It's gorgeous. It's one of those places that very wealthy people will flock to once rising sea levels make the lowlands uninhabitable.
Did you enjoy growing up in Maine?
I did. I loved it. Yeah, I really did. As I've grown older, I've grown more appreciative of the fact that I grew up there. It's unique.
Yeah. As a little boy growing up, did you think comedy was in the books for you?
No, not at all.
In the cards?
I didn't think about that at all. I love stand-up comedy, and I used to listen to. This is what I tell people is that when Napster came out, all my friends we were on AOL Instant Messenger downloading music illegally, and I was downloading comedy illegally. I was listening to Eddie Murphy, Louis Black, Jerry Seinfeld, Richard Pryor, and George Carlin on Napster. And I knew all the words to all their albums. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think that might have been a very telling signal of where I was going to end up.
And so at what point, do you remember like the first time you thought, hey, I'm maybe kind of funny?
Well, I always tried to be funny.
Were you a class clown?
But I don't think anyone would have credited me with that. I was outspoken. I was gregarious. I don't think... but I had my shit together. Can we swear on this podcast?
You can swear as much as
I had my shit together that I don't think anyone would have called me a class clown. I wasn't like, falling out of my chair in science class or pulling dumb faces or something.
Right.
But I was disruptive. I was very energetic, hyper at times, and I just needed outlets. And so... most of the time that was sports, but sometimes I would perform on stages.
What did you think that you would end up doing? What was the dream job when you were a young...
It morphed. Like when I was 5, I wanted to be a fireman. But then 9/11 happened and I got scared.
That's fucked. No.
You become aware of the risks. No, I grew up, professional athlete. I wanted to be in the NBA. I used to think that if I sank the last 10 jumpers on my court in a row, I wouldn't let myself go in until I'd made 10 shots in a row. But some days, unfortunately, that meant that I had to shoot layups because, otherwise I'd be out there all night. But we had lights on the court. I used to go out and shoot all the time. And then, unfortunately, it was just a lot easier to be good at lacrosse, even though I didn't like lacrosse that much. So I used that to get into college. And then I went to college, and when I was in high school and in college, I always thought that I needed to go work for Goldman Sachs.
Oh,
I had
you're one of those.
Well, I just had I had it in my brain that
Right.
being in sales and trading at Goldman Sachs was my destiny.
What did your parents do?
My mom was in academia. She was a professor of French literature, but stopped that, I don't know, when I was 5 or 6.
Now I have something to tell you, because I was listening to you on Andrew Collin
Oh, Puddles?
on Puddles.
Yeah.
Funny guy.
Funny guy.
He's
yeah.
he cracks me up. But I know one of the big themes was France, French, all that. I hear you're fluent. I'm fluent in French too.
Are you really?
We could technically do this in French, but we won't.
I feel like that would disenchant some of your listeners.
I feel like it would most, except for maybe my mom.
But Felix is a very French name.
Well, so my mom is French.
Okay.
She's Parisian.
What's her last name? Her maiden name?
Ikovic, which is like Polish because
okay.
her dad is from Poland.
Got it.
But yeah, she grew up in France, Parisian. So your mom's not French.
No.
But she's fluent.
Oh my God, 1,000 times over. And not only that, but could present Immanuel Kant's philosophies in French. I mean, that was the level. It was so academic and so she wrote, a 250-page doctoral thesis on philosophy in I don't even know, comparative literature. It was insane. It's something I would never understand even in English. So yeah, she speaks very well. She speaks very high-minded French too.
Do you ever have a chance to speak now?
Well, she and I never really spoke. And I think that was because there was a gulf between the way that she knew French and the way that I learned it, which was, I wanted to learn French because of her influence, but I went over to a soccer camp when I was young in Bordeaux, and it was put on by the team there, the Girondins de Bordeaux, and I would go every summer, and this was like when I was probably 9 or 10, and within a couple years, I was pretty fluent.
Do you still go back? When was the last time you were in France?
I was there this past summer with my girlfriend.
Where'd you guys go?
We went to Annecy, which is not far from the Alps. It's like within the Alps, kind of. And we stayed on the lake there. It's really beautiful. It's a nice place.
Have you been? I mean, do you like the South often?
So I did a semester at Sciences Po. In Menton.
My mom's gonna be jumping in her seat when she hears this.
There was a Middle Eastern Studies satellite campus of Sciences Po in Menton, which is the last town on the French-Italian border.
I have a friend that goes there actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Man,
in Menton.
Yeah, it was a cool town and a cool program. It was also very different from the study abroad programs that my friends did.
Right.
All my friends went to like Florence, Italy, and Rome, and they did the like Fairfield University program, and they didn't have to do any homework at all.
Yeah.
And my school was hard. I mean, I didn't really get any kind of break from what I had left at Harvard. So it was, I don't know. It was fun, but
so basically lacrosse is like your big thing growing up. I mean, high level lacrosse player.
Soccer and lacrosse were the two that I played a lot. How good was I? I was good. I was out of high school, I was one of the top 100 players in the country.
Okay, you can humble brag.
I got I got scholarship offers from Hopkins and all the D1 schools, all the Ivies. The Ivies don't offer athletic scholarships, but I had the choice basically to go where I wanted.
And
because of
honestly, I don't even know that much about lacrosse or professional lacrosse. Professional lacrosse exists.
It does, but
it's
in
not,
its infancy.
right.
I think they've had the Major League Lacrosse for years, but now there's this big transition towards a new league that has sprung up. Thanks to Paul Rabel, who is widely considered the best player in the world. But, you're not making a living. There's like a handful of guys who make a living in lacrosse due to sponsorships and stuff.
So that was never in.
I had no interest.
No interest.
And I don't, nor would I necessarily have been good enough. By the time I was a senior, I didn't really care anymore.
Right. So then, straight out of college, I don't know if it's. I think you talked about it on Puddles with Andrew, but. You had a big tutoring business.
Yeah, that all formed pretty organically. I moved to New York to get into comedy. I had hoped to get Teach for America. I wanted to do that. Okay. Do you know Teach for America?
I don't.
Teach for America is this very cool program where basically you go to some place in America and you teach at a school that has a big need for teachers. Okay. You know, so it's like high at-risk kids. A lot of the highest need areas are always in the Mississippi Delta area. And you go and you teach for 2 years. And then while you're doing that, you get your master's degree. But then coming out of that, you've set yourself up for, you know, a lot of kids go to top law schools from there or business school, whatever it may be. And I thought that would be a very good thing to do. And I was excited about it, but I ended up not getting the job, and I thought I would. So once that fell through, that was late my senior year. I had not applied to try to do any of the jobs that my friends were doing. They all had jobs in banking and in trading and stuff. So I moved to New York with the idea that I would get into comedy. And it was a sort of a spur of the moment decision. And at every turn, there were so many times where a life event could have taken me away from it and taken me in another direction. But life failed me towards comedy at every turn.
Well, okay.
So at one point, 2 years in, I was sick of doing open mics in the Lower East Side for 6 other comedians and, you know, signing up last and having to sit through the drudgery and the self-flagellation that everyone was.
You're how old at this point?
I was 23, 24. Okay. Yeah. It was a contest to see who could tell the saddest story. And I didn't like that. It was crushing. And so eventually I was like, all right, this isn't working out. And I had done improv at UCB. I'd done all that stuff. And so I decided I needed to go to law school and start taking my life seriously. And I applied. I got a job at the DA's office as a paralegal, which was pretty cool, but the work was really boring. And then got into Fordham, but I got rejected at the top 15 law schools. And I had pretty good LSAT scores. I had a decent GPA at Harvard. I thought for sure I, would have a chance. Nope, flat out rejected. And had I gotten into any single one of those schools, I certainly would have gone, and I'm sure I would have stayed. You can't. Whereas like Fordham, which I think was like the 25th on the list, it was local. I went for 4 days, was so torn, and saw what my life would be like if I stayed in law school. Had no idea why I was doing what I was doing all of a sudden, and withdrew on the last night before I had to pay.
4 days in.
Yeah, the first night of tuition.
And what are your? I mean, you're a smart guy. You go to Harvard. What are your parents thinking at that point? They're like, are they worried?
My parents were always super supportive of whatever I was kind of voicing to them, and I think they had a faith that I would sort it out for myself. The harder thing was my very serious girlfriend at the time. Her parents really wanted me to go to law school, and so you start to feel like you're appeasing these people. Then you start resenting them, and it was very hard to make an unbiased decision. But in the end, I withdrew, and to this day, it is by far the best decision I've ever made in my life. Yeah. I was so not ready to be a lawyer, but I am glad that I got to glimpse like what that education would have been, and then also to have the balls to like get out of it before it was too late. And then immediately I started tutoring, more and more. I built my small tutoring business, got really into stand-up at that point, got passed for late night at the comic strip. I was there 4 nights a week, and all of a sudden I was doing like 10 shows a week. Wow. Most, not really mics anymore, more like a little bit up from that. And that's when I did that for a couple years. I was making a good living tutoring, and my days were full and happy. And then I got the Barstool thing.
So you're working tutoring during the day and comedy at night?
It's kind of,
Kinda
well,
like that?
it was a little, because tutoring during the week, you can only really do it after school.
Right.
So I would tutor typically from like 4 to 7 or 8 p.m. and then schedule shows around that. But I was doing comedy quite late. I was doing shows until 12:30, 1 in the morning most nights.
Did you ever have doubts that the comedy thing was not going to work out?
For sure. But it didn't matter because I was making good money tutoring. I could have, I was in those years I was making like $130,000 a year tutoring, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So why did I have to make a change? I was paying my rent. I was even saving a little bit of money. I was able to travel. I had a lot of time off in the summers. I mean, it was a great life, and there was no sense that I was like losing time. I think we are. How old are you?
How old do you think I am?
I would say like 28.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm 20.
Come on.
Swear to God. I just turned 20 a few weeks ago.
That's amazing. Are you in school?
I am in school.
Where do you go?
Boston University.
No way. Okay, so that's, you come back and forth?
I come back and forth.
My co-host.
I'm honored that you said 28th. I'm flattered.
I never know. With guys, you never know.
I get a range. I get a range. But yeah, no.
So I was going to say people of our generation, but I don't even think we're in the same generation.
Yeah,
Are you
yes.
Gen Z?
I guess. What,
I don't know what the
I'm
cutoff
I'm
is.
2000.
Right. Wow.
What is that? Josh, any idea?
That's probably Gen Z. Yeah. Whereas I'm a millennial.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say that at least in the millennials, there was this thought that spread of needing immediate gratification, right?
Right.
I think it was probably spurred by our phones and all that shit. But what it meant was that in our parents' generation, the 20s were seen as a time of exploration and being okay to try a job and not like it and switch career paths and, to fail and all of this. Whereas now we feel like we need to, the first job we get out of college, that's the job. And then we need to make X amount and climb the ladder. And by the time you're 30, you've got your 401k set and your wife picked out and you know what you're going to live and all, you belong to a golf course and all, who knows? It's different for everyone. But I maintained an open-mindedness in my 20s that my life would kind of push me in different directions. And the thing that in the end, the boat sort of narrowed its course in comedy. And so while that period of tutoring and comedy was uncertain, I wasn't asking big, difficult questions. I wasn't strung out over uncertainty. And sure enough, when you're going about it the right way, good things tend to happen, is my experience.
How different was your joke writing process and your comedy process back when you were like starting it out to as it is today? Is it different?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you write jokes when you're starting out based on what you hear. I would hear other comedians that I liked doing jokes and I would try to write jokes like them. And now you turn a corner into the personal, the painful, you mine your insecurities and the things that only you know. And I think that is when it becomes a lot more interesting.
Are you a pen to paper kind of person?
Not really. I always jot down ideas I have in my phone, but the reality is probably most of the best jokes I've ever come up with have been me just letting my mind unravel on stage. And then I go back and listen and pick up the pieces that worked.
How do you describe your brand of comedy?
Boy, I don't know. That's hard. Personal, certainly. I noticed I used a lot of I in my act. It's not that observational. I use stories as a springboard to kind of explore themes that are more universal, but I'm typically the protagonist or the antagonist in most of my jokes.
And so you're doing this for how many years? Are you doing comedy and tutoring before you get into the whole Barstool thing?
Well, I had been tutoring since the day I moved to New York, but I would say that I start the clock on being a real comedian, going about it the right way, probably 3 years before I started working at Barstool.
Okay.
Although, I'd done at least 5 years of comedy. Because I think I started working at Barstool in 2016, and I graduated in 2011. So, yeah, 5 years. And then I got the Barstool thing. I responded to a call for applications for this Barstool Idol contest that they were putting together. And I had no idea what it was going to be or, what stood at the other end of it. And I ended up getting selected to come audition. I auditioned. The poor guy, who I still know to this day, Rich, went before me and did not have a good set. And so then by comparison, they said I looked better. And I got passed in, and then I ended up winning the whole contest, so I won a job. And that was crazy because I won that on a Friday, and then they were like, all right, you start Monday.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I've kind of been, that whole week I was kind of like calling in sick to the kids I was
I know
tutoring.
you also had we talk about, that's separate, but also there's a whole story with
oh yeah, the cancer thing. Yeah, Jesus, that was a crazy week. But just I had to put, I had to like pass the kids off immediately that I had built these relationships with and their parents for years, and be like, sorry guys, I have a new full-time job. I can't work with your kids anymore. And that was, a major life-altering change.
What happened to that company? Did you hand it off to someone? Is it just kind of disintegrate?
I had a few tutors working for me, kind of part-time, and I bulked up their course load. And so just gave some of my kids off to them, and I don't know, in name, the company might still be afloat, but I don't know. It was never something it was too nebulous for me to try to package it and sell it, but it served its purpose. It was sustained me for 5 years in New York.
Now, will you? I heard the cancer scare story.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because I listened to Puddles.
Oh, okay. So you know the real version.
I know the real version.
Yeah.
For people who didn't listen to that, will you give maybe like a quick summary just so they know what we're talking about?
There's a dramatized story out there that I faked cancer to get a job at Barstool. And this story was propagated by Dave Portnoy, who thought it would be far funnier to tell it that way than the truth, which was that on the Wednesday of that week, while I was at Barstool, trying to win that contest, I had a throat surgery about a month and a half before I went in there to remove polyps from my vocal cords. I'd been hoarse for like a month or a year and a half. Very common procedure, and they took them out, and then whenever they take something out of your body in surgery, they biopsy it. Right. It's like that's what they always do. And they took it to the labs at Mount Sinai Hospital, and during that week at Barstool, I got a call in the middle of the day from my doctor, the throat doctor, Dr. Peek Woo is his name. And he said, I need you to come into the office immediately. And I was like, all right. So I snuck out of of Barstool at lunch, went up to Mount Sinai, and he said, I've got some kind of scary news. We biopsied the polyps, and they came back as showing signs of cancerous malignancies. And it is looking like they are tumors as opposed to polyps, which we thought they were. So we need to start doing tests to see if this is metastasized, where it is, etc. And that was like tough. To hear.
Yeah.
I was 26 or 27, and I was in very good health. And my dad has had a couple bouts with prostate cancer. And for a young person to hear that the cancer is like fucking terrifying. So I then got back on the subway, and I came back to Barstool, and I had to run right into a test radio segment with KFC. But before I did that, I called my parents and started crying and let them know, what I had just heard. And they were like, that, we're going to figure this out. Don't freak out yet. But when I walked in to see Kevin, he could tell immediately that I was pretty shaken. And he was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't know. I just got some crazy news." And he goes, "You're not about to tell me that you have cancer, are you?" And I was like, "Well, kind of. I don't know."
This is on radio or like?
Yeah. It wasn't live. It was a test radio
okay.
segment to see how good the contestants would be at radio. And he was just floored by this. And then I told him what had happened. And then like later that day, they aired that clip as they were choosing about, who would advance and who would get voted off. But meanwhile, this was the Wednesday, I think, of the week, and every day they were voting someone off. And by this point, I had distinguished myself. I was, writing blogs well. I was making funny clips. I hate to say it, but by that point, I would say it was kind of a foregone conclusion that I was going to win. So Dave was like, Jesus Christ, on the one hand, like, I don't know if I can prevent myself from not making fun of you for having cancer, but I don't want to whatever. So they kept me through, and then I ended up winning. And then while all of this was happening, they had sent the polyps from the lab to other labs. And then they sent the samples to a clinic in San Francisco where there was I think there was some kind of conference of cancer doctors who were meeting. And the idea was that some of them would take a look at it or something. But we also got our friends in Maine, who we have a cancer doctor friend in Maine, to get involved and to start, talking to them. And he was saying to my parents, like, this is really unusual that the doctor would have removed it from his throat and not been able to tell right off the bat. And then my doctor, Peek Woo, was like, yeah, when I took it out, I've been doing this for 30 years. It really surprised me that these came back as cancerous malignancies, because to me, they looked exactly like polyps. And so all of this is going on, and, I start making content about cancer, and then, just jokes and whatever. And then 3 weeks later, I get a call while I'm at the office from Peek Woo's office, and they said, we ran a DNA test after they'd come back from San Francisco and stuff, where the sample that we took out had female DNA. So it turns out that sample didn't even belong to me. And it had been switched in the lab in Mount Sinai with a sample that belonged to a woman. And then they couldn't find my sample. They never found it. So there was no way to really say definitively that I didn't have it. But they said, I think that's the case. Honestly, I didn't even fucking clear that up. But I just know that what was crazy was, because everyone was like, you should sue the doctor's office for switching it up. And I was like, well, I don't want to sue a person for telling me I don't have cancer. That seems like bad karma. But the crazy part was the woman.
Yeah, poor woman.
Either was told, let's say that she'd had cancer and then was told, great news, you're clean. It's a miracle. We don't know what happened. And then a month later found out we were wrong. We gave the wrong sample to the wrong person. You still have it. Or she didn't have cancer and then found out a month later than she should have that she had cancer. In either case, she's the one who should be suing.
Did you ever find out what happened with her?
No, for sure not. I mean, it's all Hippocratic oath shit or whatever.
Wow.
So, unfortunately, all of that came out, and I was pretty overwhelmed and thrilled, and couldn't believe that I'd just kind of been given a clean bill of health. And then within 30 seconds, Nate had run to blog that I had faked cancer. And then Dave got on the radio and turned that into a big story. And, all of a sudden I became the guy who, and to this day, these idiots, because I like blogged the story and I included the biopsy report from Mount Sinai Hospital with the proper names of the doctors. And I think I even audio clipped the voicemail that I had from the doctor. And it's like these people are just fucking conspiracy theorists.
But Barstool, I have my I don't even know how to say it. I think Portnoy has done a great job with his goal of creating that company, and it's gotten to a point where it is huge. But I think that and there's so many different like characters there that I enjoy. Like the Marty Mush or like characters like that. They're funny, but I think it's in situations like this where you need almost like just a little bit of seriousness or a little bit of like, let's not make a whole story out of it. That it almost like you just like, come on, guys.
It's tough. I don't think you can pick and choose. I don't think you can ask them to be sincere or not. It's either all or nothing when you're there. And that was always the case. Like I always knew that. I learned that very early on. So I certainly don't blame Dave or Nate for writing the story the way that they did. That's not what bothered me. What bothers me is that to this day, some of these trolls on the internet, I think they actually believe that I faked cancer. Right. And it's just it's just kind of annoying. You know what I mean?
No, I would understand why that's annoying.
Like it's such a bad thing for someone to do.
Right.
So, I guess that's what bothers me. It doesn't really bother me. It doesn't follow me that much, but that was
especially when you start off like that.
That was trial by fire, and then I got in trouble for DMing a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. I mean, dude,
I actually didn't hear about this.
In the first month that I was there, like,
what was? I actually am not familiar with this.
I like packed up my stuff and walked out with the intention of quitting 2 or 3 times. And Big Cat stopped me every time.
What was the DM of the Instagram model? The Sports Illustrated model?
There were 3 Sports Illustrated swimsuit models who came in for a day of, to publicize stuff. And I did a segment with them that I was doing at the time called the Saturday Sit Down, which was just an interview with me and all 3 of them. And it was Lais Ribeiro, Kelsey Gale, and Danielle Harrington. And Danielle was sitting next to me on the couch. And I was kind of like probably trying to flirt a little bit, whatever, just having a great time among these incredibly beautiful women. And I kind of felt like Danielle was, maybe there was like a chance I could, certainly not the other 2, but with her, I knew she was single.
A slim chance.
And she was whatever. So afterwards, I went up to Kelly Gale and I was like, "Hey, is Danielle single?" And she was like, "I don't know. Why? Do you want me to find out?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, Kelly Gale." And she goes, "All right, well, let me take your number." And then she took my number down and then was like, "I'll let you know. We're going to Houston tonight or whatever." And then they went down to Houston for this like Super Bowl party, and Dave went with them. And while they were in Houston, I think one of the women came up to Dave and was like, "Did you know that your employee Francis kind of has a crush on my friend Danielle?" And Dave was like, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, he's trying to like ask her out or something."
Oh, jeez.
And so then they started I think they started messing with me a little bit. They were like, "You should DM her." And I was like, this feels like a trap. They were like, "No, trust me. She's so into that." And so I was like, all right, it still feels like a trap. So I'm just going to send something very not weird. I sent her a DM saying, "Hey, it was great working with you. When you're back in New York, let's go boxing sometime." Because she had mentioned she liked working out with boxing classes. And that was all I said. And so like Dave reads this DM and he's like, "Who the fuck does this kid think he is? These girls are the most beautiful women in the world. He's got red hair and he faked cancer." And the girls were like, "What?"
Oh, Jesus.
And then it turned into this whole like people were mad at Dave for cock blocking me. And I became like a little bit of a cult hero just for a minute of having shot my shot and shoot for the moon and dream big. And
hold up, did she respond?
No, Danielle never did. But the others, I like went back and forth with Kelly Gale, laughing about it. But I have to also say that in my life, asking a girl out like that wasn't some insane Hail Mary. Let me put it this way. It's not that I necessarily thought it would lead to a date, but I also didn't feel like I was taking a shot in the dark.
Okay.
I
mean, there was a reason for you to take that shot.
Yeah.
You saw the hoop.
Dude,
and you
exactly.
set your feet. You took the shot.
So
there was a reason to do it.
It wasn't out of the realm of
possibility
for me that I would ask her out or that she would say yes.
But then it blew up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would have, even without that interference, I'm not sure it would have materialized, but
so what
a
is
boy
your...
can dream.
A boy can
the
dream.
Next year, Danielle got the cover, by the way. She was like a rookie that year,
Wow.
and then the next year she got the cover.
Huh.
It's too funny.
So then what, I'm also curious because, now, even in every year, Barstool kind of gets bigger, but, people only see what's really on the outside. And I don't really watch all their stuff. I'm just more curious, from someone who was on the inside for a little while, what would you say is a big misconception about Barstool?
I think, it was one of the ones that I had, which was that it's a place it's like a playground.
Yeah, that's what it feels. Actually, I don't think that's it looks like a playground.
I think I had this idea, especially in the old office. I had this vision that it was just a shit show, like a place where people went and fucked around and hopefully captured some funny stuff. But the reality is, Big Cat is one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. He is relentless about his podcast and putting out feelers to source guests, and his process for how he get people on, pardon my take, is even if he weren't as successful as he was at this, he could do whatever PR. He'd be an incredible publicist. He's just tireless. And PFT too. Kevin's very good. Dave is so thirsty to keep creating.
Right.
Just relentlessly creative people. And there's a huge gulf between the people at the office who kind of skate by under the radar and are just sort of happy to be there, and who are never going to make a lot of money or blow up, versus the people who are successful. You look at Riggs, right? And Riggs is a buddy of mine from Harvard. And I would say this, he's a very smart guy. I don't think that he has, tremendous comedic instincts. I don't think that even he would call himself a particularly outwardly funny person, and yet he has been so successful because he's very smart and he has harnessed this golf world. He's a very good radio host. He's a very good organizer, and he's a leader. And it shows that you can be successful at Barstool without just being the funniest guy there. You know what I mean?
What do you think? I think Dave gets a lot of slack. Some deserve, some maybe not. But what do you think makes him, so successful? He always wants that new content. He's pushing it forward. But as a leader, as the founder, he's the founder of Barstool. What do you think is something that you kind of took away from him as a character, for better or for worse, as something that positive of the way he works?
Well, first of all, I only really have positive feelings about all of those guys. I walked out of there. The day I got fired, I received a text message from every single person that worked at the company, minus a few of the salespeople or whatever, but every single content person saying how sad they were. I had forged good relationships. Even Dave, behind the scenes after he fired me, reached out and seemed genuinely bummed out that he felt he had to do that. So I would say Dave, what I saw him do, was he had the courage of his convictions in a way that you don't see often in comedy. And he just truly believed that what he was doing was funny and original and unique. I mean, you couldn't. It would be very hard to find. Go do a pizza review.
Yeah.
and tape it and then watch it.
Right.
You will see how hard it is to make that funny. And yet he does it on a daily basis. He stands by his content. He doesn't back down when the PC police come knocking. And I think to push forward and not bend in the face of mounting pressure from political correctness and whatever you want to call it is it's courage. I mean, in this day and age, I get scared, especially now, about being canceled or being marginalized for the wrong tweet, and he just continues to shoot from the hip, and it's pretty impressive.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about Manscaped. Support for Where's This Going comes from Manscaped. I have breaking news for everyone. Manscaped, after 18 months of research, has developed the greatest ball hair trimmer ever known to man. Francis, I asked you this before. Is there a small little manscaping story that you have for this general public listening?
Well, I will say this. One time I trimmed my pubic hair, but then I was in the process of it, and then I think I got like a phone call or something. And then the girl I was expecting to hook up with came over, and we hooked up, and like only half, one half of my pubes was trimmed.
Did you forget to just do the other half, or what's
Yeah,
going on
yeah.
there?
I never went back
finished.
to it. And you can't. It's one thing if I had like trimmed a landing strip, because then I could have been like, trying to spice things up. But just one half, asymmetrically shaven, shorn.
Let me guess, it didn't work out for a long time.
No, I think I don't. Who knows? I don't even remember who the girl was, but I do remember that happening, and that's a funny thing to try.
I don't even know. I don't even think. I mean, you just fully forgot.
Yeah, it's happened. I think that's happened a couple times, but that was the only time it's happened where then I actually ended up getting naked in front of someone, and then like
Did
realizing.
she comment on it?
I don't know. She played through.
Wow,
she was a trooper.
She's a real trooper.
Yeah.
Well, this third generation Manscaped trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to prevent manscaping accidents and forgetfulness of shaving your ball hair. Millions of balls are about to be nick-free thanks to Manscaped's advanced skin-safe technology. If you use the Lawnmower 2.0, it's an easy transition because it's the same replacement blade with a new and improved skin-safe technology. When I tell you this is premium, I mean absolutely premium. This battery will last up to 90 minutes, so you can take a longer shave. One of the coolest new features is the LED light, which illuminates grooming areas for a closer and more precise trimming. They've also upgraded to a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology. And let's not forget about the charging stand. Show your mower off loud and proud, because this intelligently designed stand is a rapid charging dock powered by USB. If you're listening to me speak right now, first of all, thank you. And second, you are one of the first people to hear about this life-changing product, and I want you to experience it firsthand for yourself. Trim that junk of yours. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code WTG at manscaped.com. That's WTG for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Francis, your balls will thank you.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So there's another question that I had. I was actually thinking about asking you this off air, but
fire it.
I'm firing it now because you're a New York comic and you're in this. I mean, at least from the outside. Sorry, I just hit you on this.
All good. All good.
At least from the outside in, it seems very much as there's there's the West Coast comics, East Coast comics, or New York comics, and it's a very different group of people. And so you're in this world of New York comics, and there's a comedian, because you were talking about cancel culture, tweeting things out that are that can get poorly taken by a lot of people. There's a comedian recently. I know you're
Ari
aware.
Shaffir?
Ari Shaffir.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you're friends with him, not friends with him. And I just wanted to hear. I mean, I was gonna ask you off air, but fuck it, I'm doing it on air.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that situation?
Man, I thought about this a lot.
I want to hear your take.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and we actually talked about it on our podcast, and then we cut the segment. And I don't really know why. But here's the thing. I can't say that I'm friends with Ari. I can say that I'm an admirer of Ari.
Okay.
You know, we've said hi to he knows who I am. We've said hi to each other, you know, waiting to go up on stage on the same show. The thing that where I've settled on what happened, and if you don't know, Ari Shaffir, moments after the Kobe Bryant news broke, tweeted out a pretty tough video and a tweet saying, you know, Kobe Bryant died 23 years too late. He raped somebody, and this is a good day. Fuck the Lakers. Congrats to the helicopter pilot who didn't gas up the chopper or something like that. And I think when you step away from it, but you know, now he's getting death threats. He's basically, you know, he can't perform in certain places. If he's on a lineup at a club in New York, that club gets bomb threats from Kobe fans, presumably. So whatever, an insane situation. And he was doing it, as he puts it, as a joke for his fans. Apparently, whenever some famous person dies, he always goes and celebrates their death this way. But there are a couple things that I want to say. And the first is, you know, in and of itself, Ari Shaffir deserves to say whatever the fuck he wants to say. He can say you cannot tell somebody in America that they can't say something. What you can say is you can say that. You just have to be okay living with the consequences, right? And the consequences now are, I don't know. I don't know how it will affect his career. I'm pretty sure he's going to be fine. He may not be able to perform in LA for a while, you know, but dude, he's too good of a comic. I mean, you know, I've been kind of keeping an eye on his like following. Yeah. It hasn't dipped that much.
I don't know. Same as you. I mean, the actual tweet, it's that when I saw it, right? Because I saw Michael Rappaport retweet it, because Michael Rappaport was going crazy off on him on Twitter when it first came out. I thought, I mean, first of all, the Kobe, that day, I will probably remember that day for a long time probably for the rest of my life, just because Kobe was a big idol of mine growing up. I mean, I saw him during his prime, basically. And so I was devastated that day. And then you see stuff like that. And look, whether he does that as that's his thing, you know, that he's entitled. Of course, he's entitled to say what he wants, and he faces the repercussions. And I don't think he was aware of the repercussions that were coming. I think. Let me. Well, there's one last thing. You're a comedian.
Yeah.
I like anything comedy related and funny under the fucking sun. I think, like, I'm a huge fan of Schultz. I think he says, I went to his show, he could say the most fucked up shit in the world. But the thing about Schultz or Chappelle or any of these, they're funny. At the end of the day, if it's funny, period. And I think that and I think that canceling someone because they make a racist joke, or if it's a joke, it's a joke. This, I didn't see the punchline. I didn't see anything funny about it, right? Not to mention the timing was pretty terrible. So in this situation, I'm like, you know, do I follow Shaffir's comedy that much? No, I don't. But do I think he deserves to never perform again? I also don't think that either. I think it was, it was honestly a really interesting moment to see like how comedians and people in that world are reacting, because I think I'm never for canceling anyone. I think this cancel culture is just ridiculous. But I think that this shed light on the fact it was just sad to see in that moment, to even see someone say that, period.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. But, you know, I have to say, yeah, it's an insane thing that he said. It's insane. But it's also so insane that most sane people shouldn't give it the time of day. Nor should they be consumed by it,
right,
or issue some kind of like fatwa on Ari Shaffir. They should not be weaponizing and
No.
doxing him and doxing his parents. It's fine if people just say,
Yes.
fuck Ari Shaffir, I never want to hear his comedy again, and people quit him,
100%.
right? But what I wrote in this piece I wrote for Bro Bible was, like, do you really think Kobe would have wanted people to go kill this dude?
No.
Like, Kobe Bryant was the ultimate silencer of crowds. Some of my favorite Kobe clips that I've gone back to watch are compilations of him hitting daggers in away arenas. And he seemed to thrive in Madison Square Garden, in, Boston Garden. I mean, the guy loved performing against people that hated him. And, you look back at the rape allegation, and I remember in the wake of that, I remember him scoring like 40 points a game, like 15 straight games. It was as if he just played better when people hated him.
Right.
So I tend to believe that Kobe Bryant, if he were still here to advise those people who are feeling as though they are enacting vengeance on his behalf against Ari Shaffir, he would be like, what? No. Rise above it.
I 100% agree with that. And I think that the death threats, I mean, that's just way too far. That is just way too far. If you didn't appreciate that joke, which most didn't, then just don't follow him, or don't watch his stuff or whatever. But to threats on his life, his parents,
that's crazy.
I mean, that is just
crazy
absurd.
shit.
I think it'll be interesting to see, because there's, like, I think in this day and age, it's different levels of cancel culture. Like Louis C.K. was one, Harvey Weinstein's a fully different level, and then you have this stuff, which is not really in the same Me Too era or anything like that, but it's still a different kind of, like, there's people that want to cancel him, and his agency dropped him. I don't know.
I'm telling you, man, people aren't gonna care. I've experienced this on a smaller level. People are not going to care about Ari Shaffir in a month or 2 months. And maybe this was so sensitive that the time period will be a little longer or whatever. But it's just crazy to me that people care so much in that moment.
Right.
And then 3 weeks later, it wouldn't even be on their mind. And they would have moved on to the next thing that they're going to be angry about. Dude, for me, I got fired for writing an article in poor taste about a woman who had been killed. And I didn't know when I wrote the article that she was dead. I thought she was alive. I totally misread the sources that I was using and kind of made a lighthearted, very careless, very low effort blog about this story. And, look, in hindsight, it all looked bad. And there were people who emailed me, and they would be like, whenever you apply to a job from now on, I'm going to find out, and I'm going to email that place and make sure they know what a piece of shit you are. I had people, telling me that I was the scum of the earth and that I was a vile person, and just all this crazy shit. And I remember kind of just some of the emails I would respond to and just be like, I understand. I understand, and I apologize. That was all I could really say, right? And then 3 days later, all of the Jeffrey Epstein news broke. Not that he had killed himself yet, but that he had been, flying underage prostitutes around and sex trafficking and all this crazy shit. And nobody cared. It was a Thanos finger snap of people who cared about me, shifting them over to this other thing to be mad about that was so much worse than what I had done.
Right.
And in the moment, the internet, nobody has perspective. Nobody can rise above and look at it from a bird's eye view and be like, okay, here's what happened here. Here's what happened here. What is the proper way to react?
Right.
Everyone just fucking picks up their pickaxe or their fucking gun and says, let's go, let's march, let's go find these people.
Right.
And it's like, where did that happen?
Yeah.
Why can't we take a beat and just say, what is the proper, thoughtful response to this? There's nobody doing that anymore.
Yeah, you're 100% right. No, I think I was just interested to see your take, like from a comedian standpoint.
Yeah, I'm always gonna err on the side of the comedian.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's my bias. I just think that like comedians are the last bastion of free speech. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's our duty to say the things that people are afraid to say and to play with topics that are very difficult to talk about. But at the same time, what you said is very true. I think you get more leeway and more support from comedians if what you've said is very funny.
Right.
And a great example would be like Louis C.K.'s 9/11 joke, where he said, the process of healing for me, I judged it based on how quickly I masturbated after the whole tragedy had happened. And for me, it was between the two towers being struck. And I always thought that was so brilliant and such a great, it's a 9/11 joke.
Right.
And this is arguably the worst tragedy ever to befall America.
Right.
And I don't think anyone would ever be mad at him for that.
Right. Just because it was funny.
People get it. They're like, that's clearly a joke.
Yeah.
That's funny.
We'll see. I think it'll be really interesting to see. I think I don't even know if it's necessarily like the people that are just going to continue being mad, but it's more like, if I'm a comedy club, it's like now if you put him on, you fear backlash, and people are going to look out for themselves.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's crazy is that like my home club, the Stand, they've started throwing him up unannounced.
Oh, really?
Because if they put him on a lineup, people freak out.
And do you know how? So has he gone? Has he done clubs since?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And do you know what the reaction has been from people? Do they give a fuck?
Well, the crowd at the Stand is always pretty cool. I mean, they're just like they know what they're getting themselves into.
Right.
It's an edgier club. The Legion of Skanks operates out of there, and I think New York Comedy Club, I read, but I don't know for sure, that they had like banned him forever. Which, if that's true, I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I don't think Ari's gonna. He'll have to do some other stuff for a little bit. Louis just works in the South now. Seriously.
I know. He's made. Well, I hear he's making a comeback.
But he can't. He doesn't perform in New York.
That's true. I haven't seen anything.
He lives in New York.
Wow.
And he won't go up on stage because when he goes to the cellar,
you know him?
I've met him a few times. Yeah.
Have you seen him recently?
I've seen him 4 times in the last 2 weeks.
You're lying.
Twice was
Wait, what?
totally random.
Are you serious? Where?
Once was in a Whole Foods. We were in the olive oil aisle.
You and Lou in the olive oil aisle?
Yeah. We were
Hilarious.
Looking at olive oil.
Wait,
And
did you talk to him?
I said hi to him, yeah. Well, because I had
Does
met
he
him.
wear? Does he wear like? Does he try to go undercover? Like
No.
But he's also pretty recognized. I mean, he's got the red hair look.
Yeah, but it's not red anymore. It's like kind of gray now.
He's probably aged a
If
bit.
you didn't know him,
You wouldn't really.
you might not recognize him.
Is he looking? He's always a little.
He's
bigger.
lost some weight.
He's
but
a
I
little
don't-
stressed. I think.
Yeah, it might be stress weight. But I've seen him at the Stand too. He comes and just hangs out a little bit.
He doesn't do sets though.
No. Because
Interesting.
here's the problem. He'll go up. He was going up the cellar a couple times, and then there would be some fucking reporter in the room who would write about how, people got up and left, and it's an unsafe space. He was up in, I think, Canada doing some sets at a club, and some New Yorker writer went and saw him and shit all over his act, and he's working out jokes. I mean, nobody is under the scrutiny that he is.
Yeah.
And I'm not, defending what he did. Whatever. Who cares? It's not for me to care as a straight white male. I get that. I'm not part of the offended party. So my opinion doesn't matter at all. But I think it is funny that he just goes to the South now.
Well,
and that's where it's fine.
That is hilarious.
Wait, fine for him to perform.
Where else did you see him in the? You saw him 4 times in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so twice was at the Stand. So
Okay.
those are.
And he just like sits back and watches.
No, he'll be hanging out at one of the tables with some of the guys.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, or comedians. Like I know Joe List opens for him, and Joe's are there all the time doing sets. So yeah, he'll just come in. He came in with his dog, which was really cool. He had this beautiful, I think it was some kind of doodle, like golden doodle or something. I patted the dog, and then I told Louis I loved him, which was too much for a first meeting. But then in the ensuing 2 weeks, I ran into him in Whole Foods, and then I saw him again. I saw him at the Stand again with Bill Burr.
Oh,
And I so wanted to take
That's
a picture
crazy.
of the three of us, three redheaded comedians, two of whom had kind of been canceled and one, who just refused to be canceled. But,
yeah.
those two guys are like my idols
Yeah.
for sure. So,
Wow.
yeah, pretty
That's-
surreal.
That's insane. Speaking of, so back to your comedy. What's the next? I mean, you're 30.
30. Yeah.
30 on the dot.
Yeah.
How do you set goals for yourself? What do you hope Francis Ellis comedy?
Dude.
Are you at 5-10 years down the line?
It's a great question. I used to. I
Not
used
anymore.
to set goals for myself. And then I would set goals for the upcoming year, and I would never hit them. And the problem was something else good would happen, but I couldn't celebrate it as much because it wasn't the thing that I had written out that I had hoped to achieve that year. And so these great serendipitous openings and these opportunities that present themselves all of a sudden lose their luster because it's not on this fucking vision board that you made on December 31st of the year before, right? So I kind of stopped doing that. And if I'm being honest, I'm trying to take a little bit more of a in-the-moment approach to evaluating my career. And right now, I am making a very good salary. I get to work from home. I get to write whatever I want. I like the people I work for. I have good health care. My road dates, a lot of my club dates, some of them sell out. Some of them I sell very well. And that's pretty damn good. I was saying this to myself the other day, like, not to be too weird and on the nose, but I make more than over $150,000 a year to be a comedian.
Wow.
In New York City. If you had told me 6 years ago that that's where I would be here today, I would have thought that was true success.
Wow.
And so I have no complaints. Yeah, obviously you want to keep growing for sure. I used to think like, well, I want to play theaters and I want a late night spot. I want to get past the cellar. And, sure, I hope those things happen. Absolutely. But I don't know when or if they ever will. And for right now, where I'm at is, it took me getting fired to have that perspective for sure.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I'm glad you brought that up. How did your experience at Barstool and I mean there was, I don't want to say like public, I mean yeah, it was public scrutiny at times. How does that influence you as a comedian and in your writing and what you're willing to touch on, maybe sometimes willing not to touch on? Like how does that influence you in your current day brand of comedy? Well,
I think it's just a matter of forcing myself to be a little smarter. I think that even you can touch on these hot button topics as long as you're very thoughtful and articulate about your position, because it's hard for somebody to get really angry and reactive about a brilliantly written and presented point of view. I think it's when people see a tweet that says, fuck Kobe, that they get so mad. But if I were, I say that, and yet the Gayle King thing, who knows, dude? Because she was pretty level-headed in the way she mentioned that, and then she was getting death threats from Snoop Dogg and shit, and it's like, well, maybe it's just all or nothing. I don't know.
I think there's one thing also that I wanted to ask you about that I think you do a really great job through social media, just kind of promoting some of your, maybe whether it's podcasts or little bits here and there. Who are people, when I think about this next brand and next wave of comedy, the reality is whoever's making the best little Instagram, it's gotten to this point where it's the best little Instagram clips, the best little stuff here and there, is really starting to see, and it's good. It has to be good first, and then it also has to be well marketed. I know you're friends with Schultz. He's a master of that right now. Who are other guys that you feel like are in that same ballpark, and how meaningful and how much do you think about marketing from a comedic standpoint?
Well, I mean, Schultz is kind of the guy who changed everything.
Yeah.
And I think he will be looked back upon as somebody who really drove the industry in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest impact that he's having, I think, is in the ownership over our material. Because, 5-10 years ago, if you wanted anybody to see your stand-up, you had to get a Comedy Central half hour or a late night set. And we were all beholden to the bookers and the Just for Laughs festival to get us out there. And now every comedian is his or her own startup.
Right. And
we have the means of production, and you're either good or you're not. And if you're good, your shit should grow. And so, yeah, I mean, Schultz was definitely somebody that changed my way of thinking, especially from this idea of like, don't put your material online because you need to save it in case you get a special, to give everything away for free and just keep writing such that if you do get a special, you'll be able to come up with the material for it. Right. As far as other comedians go, I think a lot of comedians I admired either went step for step with him and were doing it at the same time, or were influenced by him. Theo Von, putting out his stand-up clips was a big reason that I really wanted to make sure we had a video component of our stand-up, of our podcast. Excuse me. Theo putting out his podcast clips was one of the big reasons I wanted to put out podcast clips. The Joe Rogan, all the clips I see from the Rogan, that are so great, that go viral on YouTube. The biggest assets I have right now are my Instagram and my Twitter. And so I need to utilize those as much as I can to get my work out there.
To wrap things up.
Well, let me just say this.
Go ahead, say it.
This is a good podcast. You're very good at this.
Thank you very much. That means a lot.
You're 20 years old. Doesn't make you have a composure and a preparedness that most people do not have in podcasting.
That means a lot. Thank you so much.
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, though.
Yeah.
When people think about Francis Ellis comedy, if you want to, maybe a legacy. All right, let's go. Let's shoot like 30, 40 years. I said 5, 10, fuck that. Give me 40 years down the line.
Uh-huh.
Is there a way that you hope to be remembered?
Yeah, sure. I think I'd like to be remembered as being a smart comedian. Someone who didn't just do obvious stuff or low-hanging fruit stuff, but actually, through comedy, maybe influenced the way that people saw things or looked at things. Because I think the great comedians that I love have done that. You could argue that George Carlin was just as much of a philosopher as he was a comedian. And I don't aspire to those heights, but I imagine I'll write a book, maybe a few, and I would like for people to enjoy it just as much for its humor as for its well-crafted thought and language, stuff like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You can follow Francis on Twitter at Francis C. Ellis, on Instagram at Francis CC.
Yeah,
Ellis.
I made a mistake, but that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Website, great website, francisellis.com. There you can find a whole lot of good information about yourself.
Nice.
You have the Oops podcast with Giulio Gallarotti.
Yep.
You can listen to that virtually anywhere. There's one date I know on your website that we talked about earlier, Skankfest, March 27th, 29th in Houston, Texas. I don't know if there's any other things you want to tell the masses.
Yeah, I'll be at Moon Tower Comedy Festival the last weekend of April, I think, in Austin, Texas. And then May 15th to the 17th, I'll be at Brouhaha in Hartford, Connecticut. And then I will also be at Wise Guys in Salt Lake City, May 7th to the 9th.
Perfect.
Before that, yeah.
And then even before I let you go, there's one other thing that I forgot to tell you.
Oh, okay.
I had the lovely Hannah Berner on here.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
And I saw I think it was either your story or her story. You guys played tennis recently.
Yeah, we play.
And I told Hannah. So Hannah, I don't know. You don't know this. Hannah and I went to the same high school.
No way.
We played under the same tennis coach. Because I played tennis. I didn't play. I kind of stopped after high school, but we still. I mean, our high school team. I don't know if she ever talked to you about it. Was one of the best in the country.
No way.
And I saw.
Wait, where are you guys from?
I'm from Brooklyn. She's from Brooklyn, or she's from. Yeah, she grew up in. Well, her mom was the principal of my middle school.
Unbelievable. I've met her mom a few times.
Lovely lady.
Yeah.
So and I saw your forehand. It's good.
Hey, I don't profess to be a great tennis player.
But I was thinking, if you ever want to hit, let's do it, man.
I'm down.
Let's do it.
Hell yeah, brother.
But no, in all seriousness,
she's good.
She's good, and I challenged her, but I feel like she thinks that I'm not. I feel like she thinks I'm not legit. I'm gonna go on a limb and say it. But I wanna, Hannah, if you're listening, which you're probably not, but challenge you again. But no, in all seriousness, thank you so much for taking the time,
dude. My pleasure. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to have you on. I wish you absolutely nothing but the best,
Felix
and Francis.
Love it. What a blast.
And I'm gonna come and see you at the stand one of these days.
Hell yeah, check it out.
Beautiful, Francis. Everyone, thank you.